that, okay, there's a Goomba there. And you try again, you fall down a hole, and you go, okay, there's a Goomba and a hole. So you try again, the Goomba is in a hole, jump on a pipe. Welcome back. So today I want to talk about inspiration. Where do we get inspiration from? What is it? Why is it important? How to collect it? All important considerations when thinking about developing a creative practice. And now that extends past being a visual artist to music, literature, filmmaking, all sorts of stuff. So where to begin? The first thing I want to say is that art is everywhere. I think it's important to take inspiration not just from the discipline that you work in. So I'm a painter, but I don't only take inspiration from great painters or even great draftspeople or sculptors. I listen to a lot of interviews from musicians. I watch movies, right? Thinking about the moving image that is cinematic storytelling. I read books. I talk to people. I watch interviews about people who think intentionally about what they do. And not even just things that are in the arts. I think it's important to just be consuming ideas and to be keeping track of them. That's another thing I want to say, is that when you come across something really good, really juicy, freaking write it down. All of us are carrying around a computer in our pocket called a phone, a smartphone, and each phone has a notes app. So great ideas and great sources of inspirations, great moments come to you all the time, every day. And if you're paying attention and have a system for keeping track of it, you can reference it later and remix it and cast it into being anew with your own spin on it, right? So art is everywhere, and so you need to pay attention, because you never know what idea is going to come back in a new form or a better version for you to use and grab onto for a project. This is also why it's important to document and save the work that you make, as well as the work that you experience through looking at other people's work, is because maybe there's a new way or a new version of an old idea that you feel strongly about that you can iterate on. So I already talked about iteration in another video, but it's important to keep all your doors open. I don't want to, like, it's dangerous for an artist to be closed off to a way of working or a way of thinking, or shutting out ideas because it's been done. I don't want to say that you should only work off of what's done before, because in cinema, for example, we see a lot of what's called sequel syndrome, where no one's afraid, or no one wants to commit to a new idea. They just want to make sequels of stuff that's worked because it's financially lucrative. And that comes at the cost of creative storytelling, I think. It's not to say that you can't make a good sequel. You can really expand a universe with a sequel, like Shrek 2 comes to mind, probably the best Shrek movie. Because it really gives a whole other slice of the pie into this world that Shrek exists in. And so that's a great example of how storytelling can push an idea forward. But I'm thinking about, remakes, for example. Remakes can be done well, but most of the time I think people would agree that it's not as good as the original, because someone had a creative idea that was driven by the creative spirit and not driven by a cash grab, right? I also want to talk about taking inspiration from other art forms, because the principles of art and the elements of design, there's a lot of transference between between mediums and between media. So in art, we have line, shape, form, space, texture, value, color. And there's a bunch of principles of design that I forget, but some of them are repetition, space, harmony, economy. Did I say contrast already? Among others. And those rules and those principles apply to fashion, right? We think about the texture of your clothing, the fit, color blocking, the way that fashion is a way for you to project your identity and who you are. You can also think about music. You can think about artists like Tyler, the Creator, who are intentional about using different instruments like percussion and talking over music and reverb and just this grammar, creating a sense of harmony by wielding this visual and auditory grammar until it is a cohesive musical or aesthetic experience with layers of intrigue that give it a well-rounded sort of balance. So in line with doing research is keeping track of and staying inspired by the world around you, right? And most of the time, your best work is born out of your own experience. Now, what does that mean? It means that your story matters. And it's fine to start your career by copying what people have done who know all the grammar blocks and have wielded those tools to create great works. And then there's a point where you need to start contributing to the conversation because your voice can add something new to the conversation that wasn't there before. I think that's worth keeping in mind. Yeah, there's a good Neil Gaiman interview where he talks about that. He talks about no one's ever been you before. So you've never existed before, and so you always have something new to say, to add to the arena, right? So once you've started and you have that consistent practice, you start to think about what you're making and why you're making it, what ideas, narratives are important to you. And also, your experience. The other thing I want to say about your experience is you may think that you make compromises in your life at the cost of your talent or passion. But the further down the path that I get, the more I realize that everything is connected in my path. Although it's not a straight line, right? I've had a very windy path, but I do think that even though there's ups and downs in my career and my journey in my life, it's ultimately going up. But you have to start to get there, but you just have to accept that there's going to be ups and downs, but just keep going. And you'll get somewhere. New things will inspire you, and old things will inspire you in new ways because you're always changing and the path is always changing. And you just have to keep walking and have faith that you'll get there as long as you keep building your tool belt. Anyway, I was talking about your experience. So I've worked in lots of different industries at this point. I've worked lots of different jobs at this point. So my first job was at Target, very corporate, go red team. Then I worked as an arts intern for a nonprofit, and I was also going to City College at that time, which I'll do a whole different video on education in college later. And I've also worked in the museum setting, in public programs. I've also worked as a middle school art teacher. Shout out to University Middle School in Memphis, Tennessee. Woo! And I've also shown as an exhibiting artist in galleries before, and now I am a teacher and student in a grad program, as well as many years working in catering and the service industry, working at restaurants. All of those things, they don't feel like they feed into who you are and what you have to say until you have enough unconnected dots that you can finally look back and see that there's a constellation of experience here specific to you and your journey, and how that gives you actually a pretty unique point of view to stand on, right? Just to say something in a new way, or adding some nuance or specificity to it, or even saying something completely new that hasn't been given space in existing systems of knowledge or of demonstration or representation. And the last thing I want to talk about is how do you know if the thing that you inspired you, it will make for a good artwork, right? How do you know that your idea is good? There's a great book by Rick Rubin called The Creative Act. Hold on, I'll look it up. The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. And he's a music producer, again, thinking about drawing inspiration from people in different but related industries, right? And how they reflect on their career of service and of experimentation, innovation. But he talks about how the best way to test ideas is to demonstrate them, not to just talk them in or out of effect, but to try them. Because you may think in your head, well, that idea sounds bad. And maybe it is, but you won't actually know until you try it. So try all your ideas, right? Demonstrate them. Now, if you don't want to commit to the cost of materials that scale can provide the first time, you can still make a smaller version, right? We call those prototypes or tests, stuff like that. It's just important to try things out, to try on a new pair of pants before you buy it, to see if it fits right. Maybe you eyeball it and it doesn't seem like it fits, or it's the wrong cut or the wrong texture or pattern, but you won't know how it fits in relation to everything else that already works for you, excuse me, until you try it. So be brave, be bold, experiment. Don't be afraid of failure. In fact, failure is the best way to learn anything, is to try and learn once you get feedback, right? That's all failure is. It's getting feedback that something doesn't work, which is incredibly useful. It's useful to know something doesn't work so you can try again the next time. I've heard about this paradigm called the Super Mario effect, right? You don't turn the game off when you die the first time in a game like Super Mario. You accept that, okay, there's a Goomba there. And you try again, you fall down a hole, and you go, okay, there's a Goomba and a hole. So you try again, the Goomba is in a hole, jump on a pipe, get eaten by a plant. You go, okay, so now I know there are Goombas, plants, holes. And so each time you try again, you know more, you know what to avoid, you know which obstacles are in your path. And so the only way to understand those things and how to avoid them and get around them and ultimately to succeed is to put in the work and try and fail and try again. It's this cycle of learning. So write stuff down in your notes app. Always be feeding your brain and paying attention to the people in the world and the art and the media around you, and let it germinate in you once you take it in, and then expel it out again, right? And it's okay to stand on the shoulders of giants. What I mean by that is you see art in all forms that samples work that came before it, right? In art, we would call that postmodernism. It kind of quotes old compositions. But in music, it's a more well-known thing where people will take bass lines or renditions of songs and either do their own version of that song, or they'll take parts of it and then add something new to it, right? So I like this idea of sampling because we are thinking about what we have to say in an ecosystem of a larger legacy of creative exploration, right? There's an existing canon of music and a canon of art, of stuff that people have made that we can bounce off of and push back against and develop. And that's a good thing. It's important. Otherwise, there's a stagnation that happens. So art is everywhere. And so pay attention, do your research, put in the work, and write it down. Okay. See you next time.